Welcome to If Numbers Could Talk. My name is KEILYN. If Numbers Could Talk is a part of the Thinkering Group. You can find us over at thinkering.space. You can also find at Thinkering Space the Thinkering Talks podcast, the Exofathom podcast, along with the Plank Talks with Joe. When you get a chance, please check out our merchandise. We have merchandise on our website, thinkering.space, as well as merchandise at teespring.com/thinkering shop. Please visit, grab a t-shirt, grab a mug. We'll appreciate it. And when you do, feel free to let us know that you've decided to become a member of any of our fan clubs. Today's episode is really easy, really simple, really smooth for anyone who's doing fantasies this year, anyone who's just keeping up with what's going on in the NBA. I'm here for you today. But let's remember, this is a business. It is a business. So as much as we like to see guys in certain places, we prefer to watch a particular guy play with guys in a certain city. Trades are going to happen. And when trades happen, who knows? Maybe your fantasy gets messed up. Maybe you don't like the trade. Maybe your team loses a guy. Maybe your team gains a guy. But we're not going to talk much about that part of the trades today. Today, we're going to talk about the numbers. We're going to talk about what each of these players were doing leading up until being traded. What were each of these players doing, and what are they bringing to the next team? The one stat I'm not going to include today is turnovers. I am not going to include turnovers because sometimes turnovers are circumstantial, sometimes. And what I mean by that is based on your role, what scenario are you in? Are you in the situation where guys are dumping the ball off to you right before the buzzer beats, or you have to throw the ball across court, or those kind of situations? Or are you simply a clumsy guy? Do you throw the ball out of bounds? Do you turn it over by getting steals taken off of you? Those type of things. So I think those things will change based on the players around you. So I'm not going to add or include turnovers today. But every player in what we would call somewhat of a major or a headline trade on the trade deadline of the NBA, which was March 25th of 2021 this year, I'm going to go over a good portion of them. Not all of the trades, but I want to say this is the majority of the trades. All of the ones that I know for sure were ticker worthy or notable. Now, I don't think I put them in any particular order. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, this trade is a little more important than others based on this list. I also included at the very end signings. So guys that were waived, a few guys that were waived, and they got signed by different teams, and here they are now. So let's find out. Where do we start, right? Well, here's where we will start. We'll start with the Portland and Toronto trade. Portland Trail Blazers and the Toronto Raptors made a trade. That trade was for the Portland Trail Blazers to get Norman Powell and the Toronto Raptors to get Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Norman Powell has played 44 games this season. He has averaged 19.5 points, 3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and 1.1 steals with no blocks. Gary Trent Jr. has played 44 games this season. He has averaged 14.6 points, 2.3 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 0.9 steals, and 0.1 blocks. Rodney Hood has played 41 games and averaged 4.9 points, 1.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 0.5 steals, and 0.1 blocks. The Denver Nuggets made a trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That trade moved JaVale McGee for Isaiah Hartenstein. or Hartenstein. JaVale McGee played 33 games this season and averaged 8 points, 5.2 rebounds, 1 assist, zero point 0.5 steals, and 1.2 blocks. Isaiah Hartenstein played 31 games this season, and he has averaged 3.5 points, 3.2 rebounds, 0.7 assists, 0.4 steals, and 0.7 blocks. This is what they are bringing to the Knicks team. This is what these guys are bringing to these teams that they're going to. The Dallas Mavericks made a trade with the New Orleans Pelicans, and JJ Redick was traded for James Johnson and Wesley Iwundu. JJ Redick has played 31 games this season and averaged 8.7 points, 1.7 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.1 blocks for JJ Redick. James Johnson played 29 games this season and averaged 5.7 points, 3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.8 steals, and 0.8 blocks. While Wesley Iwundu, who played 24 games this season, averaged 2 points, 2 rebounds, 0.4 assists, 0.4 assists, 0.4 steals, and 0.1 blocks. That is Wesley Iwundu. So JJ Redick was traded for James Johnson and Wesley Iwundu. JaVale McGee was traded for Isaiah Hartenstein. Norman Powell was traded for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. We now move on to the Celtics. The Celtics, who was traded from the Celtics and who were they traded for? From the Magic. Well, the Celtics traded away Jeff Teague and received from the Magic Evan Fournier. Jeff Teague played 34 games this season so far. And in those 34 games, he averaged 6.9 points, 1.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.8 steals, and 0.2 blocks. Evan Fournier played 27 games. And in those 27 games, he averaged 19 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.1 steals, and 0.4 blocks for Evan Fournier, who went to the Boston Celtics. The next trade that happened was between the Clippers and the Atlanta Hawks. Rajon Rondo went to the LA Clippers, and Lou Williams is headed down, or is now a member of the Atlanta Hawks. Rajon Rondo this season has played 27 games and averaged 3.9 points, 2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.1 blocks. While Lou Williams has played 42 games this season, and Lou Williams has averaged 12.1 points, 2 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 0.9 steals, and 0.1 blocks for Lou Williams. I thought that was a pretty interesting trade right there. Lou Williams for Rajon Rondo. They both bring different things, and they both are very pivotal players. All of the trades above that I named, Evan Fournier, big move. JJ Redick, big move. JaVale McGee, big move. The Norman Powell, Gary Trent Jr., Rodney Hood trade is pretty even in my opinion. But you're getting a lot with both that trade. But those other trades, the Evan Fournier trade, the JJ Redick trade, the JaVale McGee trade, there's a clear advantage in my opinion, because what I'm not telling you is about the picks. There are picks that were given up. So I'm just talking about right now momentary advantages, not long-term advantages, not even advantages that may really help a team advance much in this season with the single trade. But the Rajon Rondo Williams trade I felt was pretty even. Depending on what you're looking for. If you've been watching the Clippers, they definitely need another point guard, a real consummate I run plays. I'm here to orchestrate point guard, and Rajon Rondo is that. Lou Williams is a great player, 6th man of the year, umpteen times over. But let's get on to the next trade. Now, the next trade was this. To me, this next trade is where things started picking up. Again, I'm not going over every single trade from the trade deadline, but I am going over some of the more notable trades on the trade deadline, but not all of them. So here's one of the more notable trades on the trade deadline. You had the Bulls made a trade with the Orlando Magic, the Bulls and the Orlando Magic. Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu was sent to the Chicago Bulls from the Orlando Magic, and they received in return Wendell Carter Jr. and Otto Porter. Now, this is one of those trades where I feel like, again, both teams really got what they were looking for, but also an advantage. There's like Nikola Vucevic is an all-star now. He's really been if you ask a lot of the people and even myself, you're not even sure if he has been used correctly, and he's been doing amazing this season. Let's get to the stats. And Wendell Carter is the same. I don't think he's been used properly in Chicago, and he has played consistent. Nikola Vucevic has played 46 games this season, and he has averaged 24.4 points, 11.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, with 0.9 steals and 0.6 blocks for Nikola Vucevic. Al-Farouq Aminu has played 18 games this season and averaged 5.3 points with 5.3 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 0.9 steals, and 0.5 blocks for Al-Farouq Aminu. Wendell Carter Jr. has played 33 games in this season and averaged 10.8 points, 7.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, with 0.6 steals and 0.7 blocks averaged as well. Otto Porter has played 26 games and averaged 1.9 points, 3.4 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.1 steals, and 0.4 blocks for Otto Porter. Again, this is one of those trades where I feel like both teams got exactly what they were looking for, exactly what they may need as far as some of the other moves they made. But if you ask me, one team got, again, a clear advantage as far as players right now, as for what they need and what they're getting. And if I'm being honest, it just shows that all the moves on the deadline, one team we know for sure is angling to change their fate, at least as far as this season is concerned, and look different moving into the rest of the season, and that is the Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets. Let's continue as we bring up the Denver Nuggets onto our next trade. So the Denver Nuggets got traded and received JaVale McGee a little earlier, as I said. And they made another trade as well on the trade deadline. The trade that they made on the trade deadline between the Denver Nuggets and the Orlando Magic was Gary Clark, and Aaron Gordon was traded for Gary Harris and RJ Hampton. Again, yes, there are picks involved, but we're just talking about the people who are being moved right now and what they've done so far in this season to see how they may be able to help and contribute to the team that they are moving on to. So you have Gary Clark, who played 35 games this season. He averaged in those 35 games 3.4 points, 3.2 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.2 blocks. Aaron Gordon played 26 games this season and has averaged 14.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4.1 assists, with 0.7 steals and 0.8 blocks for Aaron Gordon. Gary Harris has played 19 games this season and averaged 9.7 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists, zero point 0.9 steals, and zero point 0.2 blocks for Gary Harris. While RJ Hampton has played a total of 26 games in this current season. RJ Hampton has averaged 2.8 points, 2 rebounds, 0.6 assists, 0.2 steals, and 0.1 blocks for RJ Hampton. I think it's very interesting that I've only named in every person that's been traded, only one person had a 0 in their trade. In their block column. I thought that was pretty interesting considering there is a good mixture of guards and bigs that are being moved around or have been moved around so far this season. Or have been moved around this season. There's no so far. That this is the trade deadline we're going over. I'm only going over one more of the trades from the trade deadline and the players that were waived and signed. And then I'm just going to list off the teams that had some moves and leave you guys to it. From there, take your time, think of the teams, go look at some of these rosters because there have been some real changes in the NBA. And again, if you have fantasy teams or anything like that, even if you just play video games, you probably want to know who's been moved. So if you're looking for a player, you know where to find them. Or when you go to play with your favorite team, you know if they got better or worse, in your opinion. So the trade that is still sitting on the table that we have not discussed. The Miami Heat made a trade with the Houston Rockets. The Miami Heat made a trade with the Houston Rockets. And the trade was Victor Oladipo for Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk. Victor Oladipo for Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk. Yes, again, in all of these trades, there were picks involved as well, but picks do not change anything right now, and the picks do not have averages for this season. Victor Oladipo averaged 20.8 points with 5 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.4 blocks. That is his average, Victor Oladipo, so far in this season. Victor Oladipo has played 29 games. Avery Bradley has played 11 games this season and averaged 8 points with 1.8 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 0.8 steals, and 0.1 blocks. Kelly Olynyk has played 49 games this season, 49 games for Kelly Olynyk, with an average of 10.5 assists. 10.5 points, 6 rebounds, 2.2 assists, 1 steal, and 0.6 blocks as an average for Kelly Olynyk. I think that was a good pickup for the Houston Rockets. Maybe they wanted to keep Victor Oladipo and get Kelly Olynyk, but that's not something that was plausible or possible. It didn't happen. But again, good players. Everyone that was moved around, I think, was very necessary. I don't think anyone was given or picked up by a team and it was like, oh, we're just getting him to burn up some cap space and or because we had to get rid of someone else. So about those guys that were signed, again, there were people who weren't traded. They were simply signed. And with them being signed, I'm going to go over 2 signings and go over their averages. These 2 signings, these players that were waived and signed, it's crazy because what really happened is other teams knew they didn't have to give anything up to receive these players. These players were going to be waived by their teams. And yeah, 2 of the top teams went and seized the opportunity, right? So first up, you have LaMarcus Aldridge, who is a consummate professional. Very good guy to have off of your bench or in your squad, in your team in general, just for the veteran experience. I mean, he'll help guys navigate and teach them what they need to know to get through those tough obstacles. I believe that's what he's good for, aside from what he does on the floor. LaMarcus Aldridge has played 21 games this season, and his average this season is 13.7 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists with zero point 0.4 steals and 0.9 blocks for LaMarcus Aldridge. I want to say he's like 35. For a big man, I know most people are going to hear that and say, oh, well, LeBron's 35. LeBron's not a big man, and LeBron is LeBron. You can't even really explain why he's still doing what he's doing at his age. But we're not going to discuss that. What we're going to discuss is the other gentleman that was signed, the guy named Andre Drummond, who played 25 games this season. He was shut down by his team about a month and a half ago, I believe. Maybe a little less than a month and a half. I'll call it 3 weeks maybe. But he was shut down by his team. They didn't want to risk him getting injured because they knew they were going to be trading him, or they believed they were trading him. Come to find out, they ended up just waiving him. But they were alleviated of debt, of course, because he turned around and was signed by the Lakers right away. And when I say alleviated by debt, I mean they don't have to pay all of the contract. I'm sure they have to pay something. So Andre Drummond played 25 games this season. He averaged 17.5 points, 13.5 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.6 steals, and 1.2 blocks average for Andre Drummond in his 25 games. He was waived by the Cleveland Cavaliers and signed by the Los Angeles Lakers. LaMarcus Aldridge was waived by the San Antonio Spurs and signed by the Brooklyn Nets. So let's look at it, guys. Teams you should go look at if you have, again, your fantasy teams. If you just like to look at the teams, you like the sport, you want to know who's been moved, go and take some looks. There are a lot of other trades that I did not mention. But the teams that had a lot of the major moves that I feel you should really go and take a look at, because they look a bit different. Even if it was one player, these teams look a bit different. The Nets and the Lakers, of course, right? The Miami Heat are going to look a lot different. The Houston Rockets are going to look a bit different, but I'm not sure if it's going to change their odds. The Nets, the Lakers, and the Heat, I think their changes are going to change their odds in a positive manner. The Portland Trailblazers and the Toronto Raptors, I think the Portland Trailblazers trade is going to help their odds. The Denver Nuggets and the Orlando Magic, I think the Denver Nuggets trades are going to help their odds. Orlando, I think they will be better, just not this year. They have a lot of guys that need to heal up and get back into rotation. The Chicago Bulls, I really believe, help their odds. I think they have the piece they needed to break the ceiling that they've been hitting for a while. The Clippers and the Atlanta Hawks made a trade. The Clippers, I think, improved their odds with that one single player, because that is the one, I believe, the one type of player that they needed, and what better player to have than that particular player. I like the Dallas Mavericks and the Pelicans trade. I'm just not sure if it helped either one of them today. And that is really how I break down all of the trades, how I look at all of the numbers, looking at the people, the players that are being moved. If I'm going to say any players, I was impressed by their numbers. I didn't expect their numbers to look as nice. As for where we currently sit, I can't say that for Gordon. I can't say that for Aaron Gordon, of course. I can't say that for Gary Trent Jr. and Norman Powell. They do their thing. I'm used to that. They have been stepping into the light when their coach calls their number. But Otto Porter, I know he gets a lot of minutes, but I didn't expect him to be averaging 11 points. I didn't expect Gary Harris to average 9 points, but I also thought he played more than 20 games this season. So that could change a little bit of that. And also Kelly Olynyk. I did not expect him to be averaging 10, 6, and 3. That's pretty impressive. But for the most part, every single player that I just went over, all of these teams that had some roster changes, it's only going to make this game more exciting for us for the rest of the season. It's going to give us a couple more things. I know I have been going very heavy on the basketball videos in the basketball coverage lately. I apologize, but we are in the heat of the season. For those who have some suggestions, things you guys would like me to cover, I know I had a couple of suggestions for quarterbacks. I want to say Aaron Rodgers was in one of those. I'm definitely working on some of those things still. I'm still working on some things for the comic book people as well. Please let me know if numbers could talk at gmail.com. Let me know in the section. Subscribe to the YouTube, please. Follow us at Thinkering Space on YouTube, Thinkering Space on YouTube, Thinkering Talks on Facebook. www.thinkering.space is our website. We really appreciate the subscriptions and all of the follows, the video views. Catch us over at Spotify for If Numbers Could Talk. And also, please check out some of our other shows. The Exo Fathom is on Mondays and Fridays. Screen Time Continuum is on Wednesdays. And of course, you're right here with me already. If Numbers Could Talk on Tuesdays. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Have a good one. Take care of yourself. Stay loved.